Redistricting, more than issues, more than campaigns, more than candidates, gerrymandering is the issue when it comes to the House races. And is that right? And in what states are we talking about?
I think that is right. What it appears right now is that Republicans will probably have somewhere between a 4 to 7 seat majority in the U.S. House. Could be slightly less than that, could be a little bit more. But no matter where that number is, in reality, it is going to be within the number of seats that Republicans stole and rigged through redistricting alone. So if you look at Florida, Republicans took themselves from 16 seats up to 20 seats in Florida. They drew themselves those 4 seats. In Texas, in Tennessee, the commissions that they hijacked or pushed to the breaking point in Iowa and Arizona, the state Supreme Court decision in Wisconsin, where a conservative Supreme Court, which was supposed to be the neutral arbiter of maps in that state, instead said, well, you're going to draw lines that make the fewest possible changes from the last map. The last map, of course, in Wisconsin, which rigged the state for an entire decade. Then you look at what the U.S. Supreme Court did on the Voting Rights Act and the maps that it affected in Alabama, in Georgia, and Louisiana. You can easily get to 12 to 14 seats that the Republicans and their robed allies on the Supreme Court and in state Supreme Courts effectively stole for them, and that made the difference in a close race for Congress.
Let's talk about that last question, obviously, is the role that the Supreme Court's decision, Dobbs' decision overturning Roe v. Wade played. And it's also really interesting to note that, was it Michigan that codified women's healthcare, abortion rights into their constitution. And I think another state, like there's no going
Michigan,
back.
Vermont, California. It was every place where there was a ballot initiative either to codify Roe or to somehow weaken women's reproductive rights. Every single one was defeated. And that's 5 states. So that was, and sorry to cut you off, but it's in states that sometimes overwhelmingly voted for Republicans, like Michigan is an outlier, but even in states, in red states that voted for Republicans right down the ticket, women broke to protect abortion rights in state referenda.
What does that say to you about where we're at now on this issue? There's Mark Joseph Stern tweeting, this election cemented abortion rights in Kansas. That's the one.
Yep.
I was thinking a pro-choice state Supreme Court justices won their retention elections, as did Democratic Governor Laura Kelly, who can fill any vacancies with more pro-choice justices. Hard to see, he writes, how Kansas moves backward on abortion now. Do you agree with your colleague?
I completely agree. And I think that these state Supreme Court races are so essential. And, Michigan, we're seeing now, having swept higher office and passed their Proposition 3, which is going to codify Roe. I think people really learned this essential lesson, which is if you're going to spike this back to the states, if you're going to take away a fundamental liberty from half the population and say it's up to the states to decide, people showed up. And in these state races, they really cared about who is going to be their Secretary of State, who is going to be their governor, who their state Supreme Court justices are. And those are races that I think Democrats have not necessarily paid attention to. And so again, going into this, I was terrified. I was like, every single school board, every single elections board, we don't do local races, but we did.
Lots of storylines to talk about, but can we talk about the white women of Georgia first?
Let's talk about them. I mean, the numbers are abysmal, and every election cycle we get surprised. White women didn't vote democratically. White women aren't Democrats, y'all. Like, we keep talking about this gender gap. And it's because Black women are so disproportionately Democratic, it makes it seem as though women are Democrats and men are Republicans, but they're not. White women and white men overwhelmingly voted for the Republican in the Georgia governor's race. And this whole nothing burger about Black men don't support Stacey Abrams. Guess what? Yes. Did they support Stacey Abrams at the same rates as Black women? No. Did they support Stacey Abrams at the same exact rates that Black women or that Black men support Democratic candidates? Absolutely. So this idea, Killer Mike and his nonsensical non-analysis, butting up to Brian Kemp, saying like, oh, Black men don't support Stacey. They don't like Stacey. They haven't heard from her, which is all untruth. It's just the data doesn't bear it out. Black men supported Stacey. So guess who supported Stacey the most? Black women. Guess who supported Stacey second to that? Black men. That's the way the trends always are in the Democratic Party. That's the way they shook out for Stacey Abrams. And here we are. White women and white men behave the way they always behaved. And Brian Kemp is going to be the governor of Georgia.
So I think I might have read 75% of white female voters in Georgia voted for the white guy and against the Black woman.
Yeah, that's fine. And that's what white women do. Like, I don't know why we get shocked every 2 to 4 years. Like, white women vote against their interests. It's like, well, someone posted, it's like, are they voting against their interests? Or maybe they're voting for, like, we have to ask ourselves what their interests are. Like, patriarchy doesn't get upheld by men alone. Neither does white supremacy. So, I always tell people, it's like, you don't have to be white to support white supremacy. You don't have to be a man to support patriarchy. And there's a reason why white women as the protected class in this country consistently vote for, sort of white nationalists, white men.
What do you think is something that is a real important piece of data, a tell as a result of how we voted the other night?
I mean, over 63% of young voters in America overwhelmingly voted for the Democratic ticket across the country. We had the second largest voter participation in American history outside of 2018. And what you're seeing here is that the youth vote is not a subsection of democracy. It is American democracy. There are 70 million young eligible voters in America, the largest eligible voting bloc, the most diverse eligible voting bloc in America. And people need to start coming to terms with that. The Gen Z and millennials are here to make sure that they're building a government that represents them and reflects them.
You mentioned a lot of issues that obviously young people, if they're paying any attention, care about or should. I don't want to should anybody, much less younger folks. But was there anything that really turned them out? A lot of people are focused on, it's easy to look at these issues that you think might be turning young folks out. But how much of an issue do you think the student loan debt relief played, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were on the ground at the University of Texas at Austin, literally the week after President Biden announced student debt relief. And we were talking to young voters that were registering to vote, energized and motivated by the fact that they're seeing their vote get counted and deliver results. So folks that turned out in record numbers in 2020, trying to keep climate change at the top of the congressional agenda, trying to prioritize student debt and organizing relentlessly for student debt relief, are seeing Democrats listen to them and Democrats deliver for them. That inspired and motivated them to continue to believe in American democracy and turn them out like never before. I think that the Democratic investment and also in marijuana, the conversations that we're having now around marijuana, motivated young people like never before to recognize that the youth agenda is driving forward and delivering major wins.
What are your thoughts on the media's reaction? What's next for Trump?
It's amazing to watch, and it's over for Trump, and he knows it. He's having a meltdown today on Twitter because of it. Rupert Murdoch created Trump the political figure, right? And the New York Post created Trump the sort of celebrity, the New York celebrity figure. So it's so key to his brand identity that it's a catastrophic loss, and he knows it. So I think it's the beginning of the end for Trump. I think A.G. Garland needs to go in there and indict him next. I think we're already seeing the anointment of Ron DeSantis, and that's another show because that's fear. We're not out of the woods. But in terms of Trump as a viable threat, he can't do it without Murdoch's blessing. And I'll say one more thing. Jared Kushner is very tight with Rupert Murdoch. They go out on the yacht together. It was Rupert's ex-girlfriend that got Jared and Ivanka back together. So once he loses that, he's losing the sort of he's losing the information battle, right? Because what else does he have? Truth Social,
I think that's really interesting to see. I mean, you're saying, I saw your tweet about that because Jared is friends with him. Trump's probably, you said this, you insinuated, Trump's telling Jared to tell his boy, Rupert, the Murdochs, back off, and he's not going to. What was that insinuating?
Yeah, well, because, Jared's a slime bucket too, and Jared's always played both sides of the fence. Like there's no love lost between Jared and Donald. They know who each other. It's a pit of vipers. They're all like that, and I think Trump is probably fearful of Jared because Jared is wilier and has his eggs in more basket. He sort of has that separate deal with KSA. He's got a lot of connections in Israel, and he does have the ear of Rupert Murdoch, and he won't save him. And Trump knows that, you know.